Hello people, Fernando with another video here for the channel. I was just watching this clip and it just shocked me that neither Joe Rogan nor Matt Walsh, who is a political commentator regarding a current social aspect, especially the woke insanity that we're suffering these days, neither of them know what marriage actually is. Listen to what they're saying.
The Joe Rogan experience.
I think of marriage is a certain thing, which is the context for procreation, for the building of the nuclear family.
What about people that get married that don't have kids? Are you opposed to that? What if they get married, they decide, you know what, we don't need kids, I'm going to get fixed?
Fixed is what people call a vasectomy. There's nothing being fixed. It's actually, this is one of those little things, one of those little key words that people have incorporated to their normalcy bias of, yes, I'm getting myself fixed. No, you're going to have a vasectomy. It's the closest you can get to getting yourself castrated like an animal because you're afraid of facing the consequences of parenthood. So you can do a number of things so as to not have children if you don't want, even if you want to engage in sexual relationships. Getting yourself castrated like an animal is one of the most idiotic, stupid things a grown-ass man can actually do. Now, in the United States, it's particularly common. Why? Well, because of pharma, because of the medical business of castrating men. And the idea of, this goes even into stuff like, I've even heard it in terms of children, in terms of doing circumcisions on children. Yeah, you get that fixed. No, you're not getting anything fixed. You're mutilating your genitalia, which specifically in the United States should be against the Constitution. It should be completely illegal. You cannot do that to a girl, to a female. You can do that to a man, which is a direct violation of rights for, equal rights for everyone. But going back to the clip here.
Get your tubes tied, let's travel the world.
Well, what do you mean am I opposed to it? I mean,
it is rich that the idea of getting yourself fixed and traveling the world is something, fancy, something that rich people in theory do. No, they don't do that. Joe Rogan definitely doesn't do that. I don't see Joe Rogan traveling all over the world with his wife and his non-kid family. He actually has kids, and he obviously loves them very much. And if you look at rich people, they usually tend to have a bunch of kids themselves. So the idea, oh yes, travel the world, see wonderful things. Well, you can do that with your kids. I do it myself with my kids. It's actually very enjoyable. The idea that there's something fabulous and glamorous about not having kids. Not having kids is one of the saddest things that could happen to a person. I've seen one of the reasons, by far, the reason why I've seen most adults cry is because they cannot have kids. And I don't have a bunch of people around me all the time. So that says a lot in itself. Going back to the video.
I think that every married couple should be open to life.
But what if they don't want to? Are you opposed to them being married? If marriage is only for procreation and to bond a family together, what about people that are deeply in love that never want to have children?
I don't think it's not only procreation, but that is one of the fundamental definitional aspects of it.
Of marriage. No, it's not. And it's perfectly fine. If you don't want to have kids, that's perfectly okay. Don't have kids. There's nothing worse than people that have kids and don't actually want them. We've seen horrible things happen when those people end up having kids. I actually know of a person that is, great person and just is not made for having kids and has decided never to have kids. That's fine as well. Now, that's really not what marriage is. And Matt Walsh, I just checked him out. He's a Catholic. Now, I can get it if you have one of these fake religions where you have, a drag queen priest and all of this mental illness that is so popular these days. I was watching this. This is illegal up to very recently. This is the kind of thing that you got your children taken away from you if you did this. We'll get to this in a second. But marriage is quite simple. A man that made a documentary about how insane it is that people don't understand what a woman is, which is, yes, an adult female. Yes, you have a grown human being that happens to be female, that is a woman. A human male is a man. And when you talk in broad terms of mankind, you're including both men and women. These are basic concepts of language that we all seem to understand, right? Except for some people that have certain, serious mental delusions or a quasi-religion cult behind what they are saying. But for normal, not crazy people, we all know what a woman is. And I thought until recently that we all knew what marriage is. Marriage is simply the union of a man and a woman before God. They promise before God that they will stay together forever. It is a religious institution, marriage. This is something that Matt Walsh, as a Catholic, I mean, I'm a Catholic myself. I'm not much of a Catholic. I'm not a practicing Catholic. I follow certain things. Not exactly the most religious person there is these days. Let's just put it that way. But yes, raised Catholic, and that's how we go in our family, right? But for a man like him not to know that, yes, it's the union between a man and a woman before God. Oh, but what if a gay couple? No. If two men want to live together, and again, I'm not looking at this from a religious perspective, because I don't look at much from a religious perspective, right? I look at it from a logical point of view. Now, if by definition marriage, it's a religious institution, which is joining a man and a woman before God. They both swear that they'll spend the rest of their life until death do us apart in front of God. They promise that to be forever, right? Yes, that's the promise they make. It is a religious thing. So if two men want to marry, no, they can do a number of things. They can live together. You can have 10 men living together. That's perfectly fine, but that's not going to be a marriage. Marriage is between a man and a woman. A Catholic should know that, right? If not, you're just pretending to be in crazy world where you make up your own definitions of things. Am I a rabbi? Yes, I decide I am just right now. Yes, I just turn into one because I identify myself. But no, I'm not. I'm not Jewish. I'm not a religious Jewish leader. I'm not a rabbi. So even if I say that, it doesn't make it true. Words mean things, and those meanings are important if we want to have basic common social interactions like normal human beings and not people in a mental asylum, right? So when you talk about men, you can have, for example, and I understand the confusion that people like maybe Joe Rogan have, that, they want to be together so they can be married. Well, no, that is religious. It is specifically to certain kinds of religions. And if you want to, make a mockery out of other people's religion, I guess you can do that. I mean, it's fairly common and very accepted these days to do this kind of insanity. You just mock everything and just disrespect what other people believe in. Yeah, and you can say, religion is not real. It's just, imagining. Okay, that's perfectly fine. But that's what the word actually means, This is like going back to Tolkien, a fictional author, a writer that just makes up worlds. Right, yeah, that's all made up. But if you have any kind of respect for the work of an author and the world he created, may that be Tolkien or the Harry Potter woman, right? That's what they made. That's what they created, even though it's fictional, at least for some people. Maybe for other people, it's actually very real and the foundation of their civilization, which is what Judeo-Christian traditions are mostly based upon. Now, you come along and say, we're a couple of guys and we're getting married. Okay, now, you can have some kind of civil union, right? Let's say, and remember, when marriage originated, again, purely religious, man, woman, God. That's basically what marriage is. Now, when the state comes along and says, okay, we're going to be giving people that marry certain rights, certain benefits, because this benefits us all in a broader context, that's perfectly fine and acceptable. So, you get married in a church, and then you go and do the civil legal aspect of your union. Now, if a man and a dog want to have a civil, a legal union in some countries where that is allowed, okay, is that beneficial for everyone? Should that person enjoy the same benefits that a real marriage between a man and a woman have, especially when there's going to be children involved? And this is where things start getting mixed up between what is religious, what is legal, what is part of the state. So is it beneficial for people to get married and have kids? Damn right it is. If not, we wouldn't have a civilization. And that's what you're seeing right now. You're seeing the collapse of our civilization because of this insanity that's being promoted, especially in the West, just by coincidence, I guess. But this is in the West specifically happening. The idea of destroying families, destroying little children, ruining lives, and having a complete meltdown of our society, right? But what I find fascinating is that this man could not defend just such a simple point, okay? And the idea of, well, what about a marriage that can have kids? That's perfectly fine. You get married in a church in front of God, if that's your religion. You get a civil union, okay? And you can have kids. Well, that's very unfortunate. Or not. Maybe you don't want to have kids. You can get married in a Catholic church and never have a child in your life. Maybe that's not what's expected from you by an institution that expects you to reproduce and have kids and so on. But there's not a problem with that, especially if you cannot really biologically have kids. That is perfectly fine. There's not going to be a problem. You're not expected to adopt. Maybe you will end up doing that later on if you feel the need and desire to do so. But there's people, married Catholics, that don't have any kids, and no one has a problem with that. It's actually quite rare these days to see a married couple, a Catholic couple that has 15 kids or non-stop having children. But it's very interesting to see these disconnections and how you can corner someone with, well, what if a couple gay guys want to get married? Well, you don't get to do that. You don't get to rewrite other people's religions and beliefs simply because you desire to make a mockery out of that. That's what's being allowed these days, and it shouldn't be the case. There should be a minimal amount of respect especially for something as important as the institution of marriage, both legally and religiously. For a lot of people, it's a big deal religiously. But even if it's not the case for you or me, if we don't consider it to be the cornerstone of our civilization to be religious people, right? You still cannot deny the social impact, the economic impact of having families, of having kids. And if that's falling apart, if people are not really married and not really having kids anymore and not giving a damn about anything and just, as Joe Rogan was saying, I just care about traveling over the world. Even though it's not what he does himself, he definitely, the last thing this man would ever sacrifice will be his family, will be his kids. He'll give up his podcast. He'll give up every single cent he has before he gives up his family, right? I know that without even, that's what you can easily tell about someone like this man. And probably Matt Walsh himself. Now, there's probably people that don't feel that way. Okay? Yeah, could you question their moral values if that's the case, if they're willing to sacrifice their families? I mean, there's people online sacrificing their families daily for a lot less money than the kind of money that Joe Rogan has. Then they're perfectly fine with doing that. Yeah? And they even have the courage to present themselves as moral religious figures while pimping their wife and kids online. Yeah, so there's people willing to do that. Now we go back to the topic of the video, the core topic. You can have people living together. If a couple homosexuals want to live together, right, and enjoy certain benefits, well, it would be a matter of deciding which kind of benefits would be logic, what kind of benefits is fair for them to have compared to a real marriage, which is a man and a woman, and likely a man and a woman that will end up having kids, and those kids will enjoy the benefits of having a true family with a mother and a father, right? The family that you would expect your children to have. Oh, my husband just died yesterday, Fernando. You're so mean. We're still a family. Of course you are. But that's not the ideal situation, and probably someone that lost a loved one would be the first one to agree to that, right? Ideally, for a child, you will have a man and a woman, a father and a mother. That's what a kid would always want to have if given the option, if given the choice. Now, giving a kid to a gay couple, like a puppy, like a bird, like a fish in a damn bowl, no, it's not the same thing. And it probably shouldn't even be allowed. I mean, it definitely shouldn't be allowed for a couple, a homosexual couple to be giving a child. And you know why not? Because it's not about the gay couple. It's not about the grown-ass adults that decided to live together in whatever arrangement they have. Again, I'm not particularly, religious in terms of, oh, that is a horrible sin and you'll all go to hell. I'm not looking at it from that perspective. I'm looking at it from the perspective of basic rights for people. And if you accept that to be something important in our civilization, little kids should have basic rights as well. And little children being the most vulnerable of people in any society, because they don't have the physical strength, they don't have the mental maturity to decide for themselves. They are not even legally allowed in many cases to decide for themselves unless it's something horrible involving terrible mutilations. In that case, little children can say, yeah, I want to do something stupid that no one would have allowed 10 years ago. In that case, yes. But when it comes to basic rights, the kids' rights go above the rights of the homosexual couple. It should always be that way. So instead of giving a kid like a pet to a gay couple, you put above that the rights of the child to be raised by a mother and a father, which would have been the natural case if something, if things had worked out ideally for that child. It's not always the case. People kids end up orphans because their parents die, because their parents are not capable to take care of them properly. For a good example would be perfect. Just this one. This little kid should be giving up to adoption to a non-insane family, to a woman that is not crazy, that is not using this child to fill the mental void in her idiotic, stupid, empty life, and have a proper, healthy, happy upbringing as a kid, right? This should have been the case with that little kid, right? So you don't put the rights, the rights of adults as of what they want in a whims, and it's statistically proven that they don't enjoy the same quality of life. They end up with problems. The chances of them being abused by the homosexual parents themselves. Guys, look it up. This is all readily available. Even if you look at left-wing institutions, they will accumulate this data and just present it the same way. You can easily find all of this. They're more likely to end up in abusive households. Homosexual couples are, it's like 50% more likely to experience domestic violence among them. Suicide rates, you know perfectly well how those go. You know how drug abuse go in those couples as well. How the hell will you justify throwing a little child into that mess? They have the right to live together. They can live together among 100 homosexuals or lesbians or whatever the case is. Now, the rights of children should always be above that. And that's what we're giving up. That's what we become as a mentally ill society at this point. It's not just a religious problem and loss of religious values. It's about basic moral values and basic common sense that we're giving up on. Folks, it's going to be all for now. Giving everything that we're seeing, prepare while you still can. You have Street Survival Skills, my book, and for the economic mess that we're seeing all over the world, surviving the economic collapse based on my experience going through an economic collapse in Argentina myself. Links for that below there in the description. Take care. See you next time.